Hello, Mrs. Arlovsky here. I'm here to read a book with you, but I wanted to start with my message t-shirt. Every little thing is going to be all right. So that's the message I thought I would start with today. For your first few chapters, I'm going to do 2 separate videos of chapter 1 and 2 and chapter 3 and 4. Just so you know, I'll probably be wearing the same shirt because I'm going to record it the same day. Anyway, it's a song by Bob Marley, and it's really titled 3 Little Birds, which I can show you. The 3 little birds are on my shirt. 3 little birds. Okay, so that's my message for today. Missing all of you. I do have my sign somewhere, but here we go. You're going to be reading An Army of Frogs, a Kalahari novel. And it was written by Trevor Price with Joel Neftali, and it was illustrated by Sanford Green. So I'm reading mine electronically because I am at home and I don't have the book in my hands. And my throat obviously needs clearing, and now it's better. Okay. So I can show it to you, but see what happens because it's on the screen. So hopefully you have the book at home and you can follow along. So in the beginning of the book, in mine, it shows pictures. So hopefully it does in yours as well, of the amphibians, where it has turtle coves and all of the things in between, eucalyptus. Let me see what's on here. Eucalyptus forest, the village. Then it has the ocean and the coral reef and all of those things illustrated on a map. The next one says the map of amphibians and surroundings. So on this one, it has the Black Plateau, Spider Queen's Castle, a moat, mines, the outback, Scorpion Lord's fortress, and the desert. So hopefully that's what you have in your book, because obviously I don't know. Then it has frogs and turtles versus, and the frogs and turtles, Daryl Gurnugan, who they call G, which is Daryl's best friend, G's mother and father, Old Jur, who is a former Kalahari, Myro, which is G's little brother, Daryl's mother is a wood frog, Thuma, Tharda, Tippy are Daryl's younger triplet siblings. So that's that page. Then we have Arabando, which is a gang leader and nemesis of Daryl, Arabando's gang, Lord Marmu, the leader of the Scorpions, Commander Pigo, Lord Marmu's second in command, Three-toed Skink mercenary. Then on the Scorpion and Spiders, we have Kura, which is Daryl's friend and apprentice healer, Kura's father, who's also a healer, Sergu, the Turtle King, Yabber, a young turtle and apprentice to Sergu, Chief Olba, leader of the frogs, Yabber's crocodile, Ponto, the Kalahari healer, Dingo, a Kalahari, Quoba, a Kalahari scout, Burnu, the Kalahari leader. Then we have Queen Jara, the ruler of the spiders. She's very interesting looking. Nogo, rock lizard mercenary, Captain Kalara, one-eyed lizard mercenary. And that's all of the beginning characters. Well, I mean, all of the characters, it seems. I don't know because I haven't read yet. So here I go. Chapter 1. With the stealth of a warrior, Daryl hopped along a wide branch, tracking the 2 scouts below. The waterfall roared in the distance, and a tasty-looking fig wasp flitted past. Daryl ignored a pang of hunger, resisting the urge to shoot his tongue at the wasp for a quick snack. Dinner could wait until he dealt with the enemy. The banyan tree rose 100 feet above Darrell into the wide Australian sky and was anchored to the earth by dozens of ropey-looking roots. The warm glow of sunset filtered through the leaves and dappled the ground beside the two scouts. They crept past the dark mouths of burrows, then stopped. The stout one, scanned the roots of the banyan. The smaller one glanced around nervously, alert to every fluttering leaf and chirping insect. Invisible to the enemy, Darrell clung to the side of the branch with his finger pads. He touched the handle of his dagger for good luck, then leaped from the tree. He landed on a lichen-spotted boulder above the path, his blood thrilling to the hunt. He grabbed a nearby stick and with a low growl sprang at the scouts. The smaller scout screamed, but the stout one thrust with his stick, his yellow eyes determined. Darrell parried the blow, and the two sticks met with a loud thunk. "Back to the desert, Scorpion," he cried. "Surrender, Croaker," the stout one sneered, "or I'll—" He dodged wildly when the knobby end of Darrell's stick whizzed toward him. "Or you'll what?" Darrell asked. He jammed his stick into the forest floor and pole vaulted over the enemy, twisting in the air to smack him from above. It was a beautiful acrobatic move, except his stick slipped and he crashed to the ground. "Ha!" the scout croaked and chopped at him with his stick. Darrell rolled away, scrambled to his feet, and lunged. His thrust missed by a mile, but that was only a feint, and his powerful kick sent the scout hurtling toward a rain puddle, where he collapsed in a moaning heap. With a twirl of his stick, Darrell turned and crouched, ready to strike the smaller scout. "If you hit me, I'll tell Cora," the small frog blurted, his eyes bulging. Darrell chuckled and relaxed, tossing the stick aside. "Don't worry, tadpole. What are you doing here anyway?" "Playing with G," the young frogling said, looking toward the pudgy frog in the puddle, Darrell's best friend, Gurnugan. "He's tagging along," Gurnugan said, rubbing his bruised stomach. "He's my little brother, after all. Maybe he'll learn something, G." Darrell said, tossing his best friend a honey snail from his pouch. "Yeah, G caught the snail with his tongue. He'll learn that instead of going to the swimming hole with the other frogs, you spend every day practicing to be a warrior." "Not every day. And you make your best friend play the scorpion," G sighed. "Plus, you hit me in the belly again." "Well, that's a scorpion's only weak spot." "It's not mine." Darrell grinned. "No, yours is pretty well padded. Very funny. Anyway, you know you love sparring." "You love sparring. I love honey snails. Got any more?" "Not for you," Darrell said, patting his pouch. "And how are you going to become a better warrior if we don't keep practicing?" "I'm good enough, Darrell. It's not like the scorpions are going to come marching into Amphibilands. They don't even know where we are." G cocked his head. "Speaking of which, where were you? You came out of nowhere." "The banyan tree." Darrell pointed his thumb upward. "You didn't look high enough." "The tree? Come here." G tugged Darrell to the puddle's edge. "Look in the water. What do you see?" Us?" "Us," G agreed. "Two ordinary wood frogs. You are not a tree frog." "Never said I was. You know what color that is?" Gurnugan asked, pointing at Darrell's reflection. "A sort of noble green?" "Sort of muddy green, Darrell. Mostly brown. You are not going to grow up and become a tree frog." "I don't want to become a tree frog." G sighed and looked at his little brother. "Three guesses, Myro. What does Darrell want to be when he grows up?" The small frog blinked his inner eyelids thoughtfully. "A hunter?" "Not a hunter." "A diver?" Not a diver. This is Daryl we're talking about. Think crazy. Oh, I know. A wombat. G furrowed his brow. No, you tadpole, not a wombat. A platypus? That's 4 guesses, and no, not a platypus. He wants to be... Gurnigan waved one chubby foreleg. A Kalapari. Myro giggled. He can't be a Kalapari. Why not? Daryl demanded. My father was a Kalapari. He was a unit leader. He was a hero. And he was a Korobori frog, Gurnigan said. The only frog in the world that can produce its own poison. But you take after your mother. You're a wood frog through and through. Take that back, Daryl said, glaring at him. I'm sorry, G said, raising his hands. But look at you. Looks can be deceiving. You think you're a Kalapari on the inside? Are you poisonous? Daryl's shoulders slumped. You know I'm not. Well, there you go then. G turned to his little brother. That's where the Kalapari's power comes from. Poison. When they tap into the poison, their eyes turn black and their skin glows and they can do impossible things. At least that's what the stories say. I've seen it, Daryl said. When I was a tadpole, my father showed me. Myro's eyes bulged. Is it true that one Kalapari can beat 100 scorpions? They move so fast, Daryl told them. They're only a blur. They're strong as a falling tree and tough as packed mud. You see this dagger? He touched his finger pad to the dagger at his side. Myro nodded. It was my father's. He could throw it from here to the pond and shave the whiskers off a dragonfly. Dragonflies don't have whiskers, G said. They did before my dad got to 'em. They laughed. Then G shot Daryl a worried look. But, buddy, you're a wood frog. There's no poison in you. And you know what wood frogs are good for? Working, little Myro said. Even I know that. And working and working and working. A pine cone blurred past them, missing Daryl by a toe pad's width. See, I had to correct that. That's the end of chapter 1. There's a lot of words in there, a lot of actions going on in there. And now I'm going to read chapter 2, so we'll see what happens. But there are a lot of words that maybe I'll come back to later. And we'll talk about them a little bit. But if you have any questions, write them down. Okay, chapter 2. In a mud-colored flash, Daryl leaped through the air and landed on a tree stump across the clearing. Kura! He shouted. A lean figure hopped onto the path, laughing softly. She was slender and graceful. She was also a wood frog, but her skin glowed bronze in the evening light, and her eyes glinted with a combination of mischief and wisdom. Caught you off guard, lazy bones, Kura said, fingering another pine cone. That means you owe me a wattle flower. You and your herbs, Daryl began. And if I hit you, she continued, you promised to bring me 3. Daryl charged at Kura, croaking his war cry, and she threw her second pine cone. Kura's father was the best healer in the village, and everyone expected that one day she'd be even better. But that meant she spent all her time experimenting with new medicines instead of practicing how to throw things at moving targets. She missed Daryl by 3 feet. Daryl puffed his throat in triumph as he stalked toward her. Surrender! Only 1 flower for you. With a teasing light in her eyes, Kura crooked her finger at him as she leaned against the stem of a leafy plant. Daryl approached warily. Kura was the only other frog who believed that the scorps and spiders might attack again. Even G went along mostly to humor Daryl. Kura was a healer, though not a fighter, so her preparation for the upcoming invasion involved finding new herbs and inventing new treatments. But she was clever, too, tricky. So she didn't rush forward. Instead, she carefully hopped closer until Kura gave the stem beside her a quick shake. A dozen overripe figs, which were balanced on the leaves above, fell in a rain around Darryl, except one that landed on his head and burst open. G and Myro laughed, but Darryl continued forward, fig pulp dripping down his cheek. A true warrior was not distracted by such things. So hopefully you can see the picture. She shakes the leaves, and then a bunch of figs fall down. And figs are like fruit. I guess they're fruit. So they knocked him in the head. I surrender, Kura said, biting her lip to keep from laughing. You are definitely the mightiest warrior in all of Amphibolands. She paused for a second. Or at least the stickiest, because, it doesn't say because in there, because figs are sticky, because, like other fruit gets sticky. In the old days, before the Kalapari left, Darryl said loftily, warriors were shown some respect. Even wood frog warriors with less poison than a boiled macadamia nut, Kura teased, who offer their friends wattle flowers to sneak attack them. How else am I going to learn? Darryl grumbled. He felt foolish, because she and G were right. He was a wood frog playing war. He wasn't a real soldier, despite all his grandiose dreams. Kura must have heard the self-doubt in his tone. She brushed a chunk of fig from his shoulder. At least you're actually getting better, she said. I'm still trying to figure out how to treat war wounds with lily pollen, and my dad just wants me to make tea for tummy aches. Yeah, but your grandmother said you're a natural, Darryl told her. You've got a gift for battlefield healing. I guess, she said, her eyes troubled. Sometimes I think I'm just wasting my time. Myro hopped closer and took Kura's webbed hand. Can we go back now? He glanced at his big brother. Mom and Dad want us home, Gurnigan. If we're late, we'll get ponded. Okay, so I'm just going to stop for a second. So you know how you get grounded? Frogs would get ponded because they live in a pond, right? They live along the pond. So they would be stuck at the pond and not be able to go anywhere. G just shrugged, even though he hated the thought of having to stay inside for a week. Darryl knew G would do whatever he did. G always backed him, even if it meant a punishment later. He didn't like fighting, but he practiced with Darryl almost every day. He didn't like stalking older frogs in the village to hone his tracking skills, or leaping from the highest leaves of the banyan to the tree. Let me start that over. Or leaping from the highest leaves of the banyan to the branches below, or body surfing down the rapids. G didn't like doing things with no self-respecting wood frog would dream of doing. But he did them so Darryl wouldn't have to do them alone. Darryl sighed. He'd rather stay outside under the half moon with the nocturnal frogs, practicing his climbing and burrowing and headbutting. The wood frogs didn't climb or burrow or headbutt. But he couldn't keep dragging G into trouble. G hated getting scolded, and he hated getting headbutted too. Besides, Darryl didn't want to disappoint his mother. Not that she ever complained. She knew her son knew that the one thing he wanted most in the world was to follow in his father's and grandfather's footsteps. They'd both been unit leaders in the Kalapari. They'd both fought legendary battles, and his father had died to keep the Amphibolands safe and hidden inside the veil. Except Darryl didn't have poison. He didn't have a single drop of his father's power. He might become a warrior without poison, but he'd never become a Kalapari. And yet, he couldn't stop trying, because instead of his father's poison, he'd inherited his mother's stubborn determination. She out-hustled any other two frogs in Australia. She worked long days in her fly shop, And then, after the shop closed, she took food to the old frogs, helped any neighbors who needed assistance, and raised the triplets, Daryl's siblings, who were still in the tadpole nursery. Yet, when he came home, scraped from rumbling with the white-lipped frogs or aching from body surfing the rapids, she'd just say, "You're your father's son, too." He'd sigh, "I'm yours, too. And that is why you should know better." Then she'd kiss him on the forehead and patch him up. She never complained, but a true Kalapari did not shirk his duty. So Daryl nodded to G, and they joined Kura and Myro. They followed, maybe that's Miro. No, I said Myro. I'm just going to say Myro. Past the pale green Munumula trees with their long weepy branches, hopping slowly to match the younger frog's short-legged leaps. "When did you put those figs there?" Daryl asked Cora, shooting out his tongue to snag bits of fruit from his arm. Cora grinned. "I didn't. I just saw them and decided to lure you into a trap. Your pouch is full of honey snails, and it's bad enough that you make Gurnigan be a scorpion every time. You think I'm going to start setting traps for you like a spider?" "You're evil enough," Daryl said, then dodged her sharp elbow. Guys?" G said. "You're probably a nightcaster, too," Daryl continued, "weaving deadly spells in your malevolent web." "Malevolent?" Cora said. "You don't even know what that means." Guys," G said again. "I do too," Daryl told Cora. "It means evil." "Guys," G's nostrils narrowed. "Speaking of evil." They stopped and looked at him. His yellow eyes bulged with worry, staring toward the outskirts of their village. "I think we now know whose figs those were," he said. That's the end of chapter 2. Okay, I hope you're enjoying it. It's interesting, isn't it? About frogs and scorpions, and should be fun.